So, my favorite episode of Game of Thrones out of the few I've watched is probably the pilot episode. And it's probably because pilot episodes are notoriously hard to do, but I think the first, season 1, episode 1 of Game of Thrones really set up for a brilliant season 1. They just had so much world building and character development and plot happening. Well, I'm gonna go through a few of my favorite parts. They start with a classic fantasy trope opening with throwaway characters that kind of reveal the legend that's happening. We've got these creatures that are coming from beyond the wall, and they're super scary and we don't know what's happening with them. But the real cool part about these throwaway characters are that they interact with the main characters later. The one who runs away interacts with Ned Stark in the beheading. That's something usually they don't do. Usually it's a long ago type of thing, but you actually got that connection back to the main story with the main characters. And it's also when Ned chops off the head of this deserter from the Night's Watch. It's super cool because you get to see a lot of Ned's ideals and build his character through this one action, because he tells Bran specifically that the man who makes the orders has to do the killing as well. You see that strong honor in Ned, and it also foreshadows a lot of what happens later. Another part early on in the episode, they find the dire wolf baby pups from the wolf mother that was killed, and they had the baby pups, one for each child, except Jon, the bastard son, doesn't get one. But then they find the little white runt that Jon gets, which kind of symbolizes how Jon is connected to the family, but he's not a full member. And then we move into the Across the Narrow Sea, where we see Viserys and Daenerys. And I really, really like that scene because Viserys is our first kind of intro into how truly nasty and despicable these characters can be. Obviously he's abusive to his sister, and he's really cool and power hungry, and we get that through him, and you're kind of introduced to how brutal this world is through this character. And then at the end of the scene, we see Daenerys getting into the bath, and her handmaiden says, "Lady, it's too hot," which is foreshadowing for later. It's very exciting when you see how that continues on. It's so smart the way they wrote that. How you get this sense you're oh, maybe just the handmaiden thought it was too hot for her, but it's actually fine for Dany. But then you realize later on in the series Dany can take the heat. It's so cool. You also start to see symbolism with the ravens. They start appearing throughout their their major continuity throughout the whole season, and you get to start seeing them appear in this episode, and I think that's really cool. I'm all for symbolism. We also get to see the Lannisters come to Winterfell. You get to see kind of the relationships and the interactions between these characters, which I think is super important when you have a giant cast of characters. You need to be able to see the relationships and how those affect each other. And you can see that Robert and Ned are the only ones between the Lannisters and the Starks that really have good relationships. They love each other and support each other. But Cersei doesn't like Cat doesn't like Cersei, Joffrey doesn't like really any of the kids. Sansa just kind of is ooh, Joffrey, but do I like him? He's kind of a jerk, but he's cute. And then we get into one of my favorite scenes in the entire first season, the Dothraki wedding between Drogo and Daenerys. You get a massive amount of world building for this Dothraki culture. They have this insane big party with dancing and sex and deaths, and it's very, very brief compared to the whole episode, but you get so much out of it. One of my favorite lines from it, after they've killed a lot of people and Daenerys is appalled, Illyrio, the guy she'd been staying with before marrying Drogo, said, "A Dothraki wedding without at least 3 deaths is a dull occasion." And that's just one little line of dialogue, and you could easily look over it as part of the story, but it builds the whole world. You are getting this Dothraki culture from this line. You also get more into Viserys' character, the way he reacts to the gifts and the culture. Daenerys tries to sit there and like accept it, but Viserys is like very strong. Like he's very adamant these are the wrong ways. And you can see this impatience and greed come out of it. Let's see, Illyrio also gives Daenerys eggs for the gift, the dragon eggs. You get to see those in the first episode, and then in the series or in the season finale, you get to see like what they become, and that's so exciting that they like connect from the first episode to the very last one. Let's see. Oh, one of my absolute favorite pieces of world building when Drogo gives Daenerys a horse as her wedding gift. And Daenerys wants to express her appreciation, so she asks Ser Jorah how to say thank you in Dothraki. And Ser Jorah says, there is no word for thank you in Dothraki. Like, that is such a strong piece of culture right there. Like, you really get to see this world. And then finally, we end the episode with one of the most shocking things. Like, you really get a sense of what's going on in the series when like Bran catches Jaime and Cersei having intimate relations, and then Jaime pushes Bran out the window, and then that's it. Like the screen just goes to black.